A massive, pitch-black wall of water 300 meters high completely blocks out the sunlight above Mumbai city. Reinforced concrete skyscrapers snap and crumble like dry twigs under the immense pressure of the ocean. From outer space, the Indian coastline is completely erased by the devouring ocean monster advancing inland. Millions of terrified people look up, witnessing death crashing down directly onto their heads at jet speed. There is nowhere to hide as the entire city sinks deep into the dark and cold sea bottom. The deafening roar of the ocean drowns out every sound of life and hope in this fateful moment. Humanity's greatest architectural achievements collapse instantly in a single moment of terrifying destruction before nature's power. Salt water penetrates deep inland, swallowing territories that were once considered absolutely safe and secure from danger. This is not science fiction. This is the absolute worst-case scenario of Mother Nature prepared for us. The day the Indian continent was torn apart and the ocean reclaimed its permanent control. A 300-meter wave crest curls, ready to deliver the final blow to modern civilization. Busy streets transform into deadly canyons, filled with violently swirling currents of dark water. A train weighing thousands of tons is swept away gently like a plastic toy in the flood. Majestic divine statues slowly sink into the darkness of the murky and filthy floodwaters. Cars and houses crash into each other, creating a brutal and gigantic meat grinder crushing everything. All city lights suddenly vanish as the national power grid is completely destroyed by the disaster. Lonely survivors cling to the tops of buildings, surrounded by an endless sea of water with no escape. Welcome to the most terrible and devastating geological event in modern human history. This is the Central Indian Deluge, where life ends and tragic legends begin to form. Hold on tight to your seats, because this nightmare is about to become reality right now. Dawn breaks beautifully over Mumbai city, and life continues normally just like any other day. Coastal fish markets bustle with laughter as fishermen hurriedly prepare their nets to set sail. Tourists gather in large crowds at the Gateway of India to capture their happiest souvenir photos. But the sky turns strange as thousands of birds simultaneously scatter in panic toward the mainland. Suddenly, the ocean water begins to recede far out, revealing the muddy seabed in a terrifying way. Curious locals walk onto the dry seabed to investigate, unaware that death is approaching fast. Deep beneath the ocean floor, millennial tectonic pressure suddenly releases a massive and violent fracture. The distant horizon disappears, replaced by a pitch-black wall of water growing larger every second. Tsunami sirens wail too late, and smiles on faces instantly vanish into sheer and absolute terror. The shadow of the giant wave begins to engulf the city, swallowing the last light of hope. The first wave impacts the coastline with the force of millions of tons of TNT exploding simultaneously. The magnificent historic Gateway of India crumbles into dust the instant it contacts the immense water pressure. The luxurious Taj Mahal Palace Hotel is swallowed by dark water, windows shattering completely in a split second. Fishing boats are lifted high into the air and thrown violently against the coastal high-rise buildings. The water does not stop at the coast, but rushes into the city center at Formula One speeds. Skyscrapers do not collapse immediately, but are uprooted by the water, floating and crashing into each other. The beautiful Bandra-Worli Bridge is torn apart, steel cables snapping and whipping the air like deadly lashes. A train moving on elevated tracks is knocked off the rails by the wave, falling freely into the water. Water floods into subway stations, turning the underground transport system into water-filled tunnels of death. Luxury cars are swept away like plastic toys, spinning helplessly in the violent swirling currents. A double-decker bus is lifted by the current and thrown through the second-floor window of an office building. The power grid explodes in a chain reaction, creating blue electric sparks dancing on the dark water. The vast Dharavi slums are completely flattened, with millions of tin roofs flying in the wind like blades. The massive cricket stadium transforms into a gigantic swimming pool filled with debris and mud. The international airport sinks under the sea, with jet planes floating and crashing into each other. A towering telecommunications tower snaps in half, collapsing and crushing a row of streets below. Divine statues in temples are swept away, drifting aimlessly amidst the chaotic flow of life. Seawater carries mud and toxic chemicals, forming a deadly brown mixture covering everything. A massive fuel storage tank ruptures and fire erupts violently right on top of the rising water. From above, Mumbai looks like a toy model being submerged in a bathtub by a naughty child. Swirling currents create sinkholes at intersections, sucking everything down into underground sewers. Tempered glass of high-rise buildings withstands too much water pressure, exploding into a rain of glass shards. Massive billboards are torn down by storm winds, falling and crushing whatever remains underneath. A coastal hospital floods up to the third floor, with medical equipment floating out of broken windows. Seawater penetrates further inland, beginning to attack peaceful suburbs dozens of miles from the coast. Low hills become temporary islands where wild animals crowd together trying to survive. A highway overpass collapses, forming a dam that causes the water level to rise even faster. The drainage system overloads and manhole covers shoot into the air like cannonballs. Ancient libraries filled with precious books are soaked in salt water, millennial knowledge dissolving into paper pulp. Police and rescue forces are completely helpless against the sheer scale of this natural disaster. Shipping containers from the seaport drift freely, crashing into each other, creating loud bomb-like explosions. An ancient church stands firm for a moment before the wave knocks its bell tower to the ground. Coastal wind turbine blades spin madly in the storm before snapping and falling into the sea. Water rises to the 5th floor of apartment buildings. Desperate residents bang on glass windows for help. A massive whale is swept by the wave into the city center, stranded amidst the rubble. 100-year-old ancient trees are uprooted, floating like matchsticks in the floodwaters. Toll booths on the highway are swept away, leaving absolutely no trace behind. Building glass panes reflect the hellish landscape unfolding all around. A rescue helicopter attempts to land, but is swatted down by storm winds into the swirling water. The water surface begins to settle at its peak level, turning the city into a giant watery grave. Car carcasses pile up at dead ends, forming dams of trash and debris. A child's doll floats lonely in the murky water, evoking the ultimate pain of loss. The entire traffic light system is underwater, leaving only the bare tops of the poles visible. Sewer rats swim everywhere, seeking dry ground on top of other dead animals. Rain begins to pour down violently, mixing with the salty seawater to increase the misery. An office building tilts at 45 degrees, furniture inside sliding down and falling out of broken windows. Neon signboards flicker one last time before sinking permanently into eternal darkness. Satellite view shows the green of the continent completely replaced by the brown of mud and soil. The water begins to penetrate historical monuments deep inland, threatening to erase millennial culture. Red fire trucks float aimlessly, their sirens still spinning hopelessly. A herd of cows is swept away, eyes wide with terror, trying to swim in the fast current. Suspension bridges snap cables, the deck collapsing into a giant V-shape in the middle of the river. The seawater foams white, crashing against cliffs, creating a roaring sound like a beast. Ship debris drifts all the way to the doorsteps of satellite cities. A chemical plant explodes, creating a toxic yellow mushroom cloud rising into the sky. Dark water begins to seep into mountain cracks, causing landslides of rocks into the flood. Motorcycles are crumpled into unrecognizable balls of scrap metal. A cinema floods, the screen still playing an action movie in the empty silence. The peak of the disaster has passed, leaving behind a completely alien and ruined world. Birds fly in the sky, finding no place to land and rest. As the water finally recedes, it leaves behind a thick layer of toxic sludge covering the entire dead city. The transportation system is completely paralyzed, with highway sections broken off in mid-air looking hauntingly tragic. Overturned buses and trains lie upside down, exposing themselves to the harsh sun like dry skeletons. A massive, panicked crowd crushes together on the few remaining high grounds fighting for standing space. The sounds of wailing and screaming echo everywhere, creating a tragic symphony of utter human desperation. Supermarkets are looted completely empty, as people trample each other just to grab a single bottle of clean water. The national power grid fails permanently, plunging millions of people into darkness and total isolation. Gas stations leak fuel, creating patches of oil slick that ignite and burn fiercely on the water's surface. The nearby nuclear power plant goes on red alert, with chimneys starting to release suspicious white steam. With no clean water to drink, people are forced to drink the murky liquid filled with bacteria and corpses. Epidemics begin to break out strongly from animal carcasses decomposing rapidly in the high tropical heat. Field hospitals are overwhelmed, with patients lying outdoors without any medicine or doctors to care for them. Relief helicopters drop supplies from above, causing bloody brawls and riots on the ground below. The military forces try to establish order, but are quickly overwhelmed by the tidal wave of desperate people. High-rise office buildings become isolated islands where people are trapped with absolutely no way out. Internet and phone signals vanish, sending modern society back to the Stone Age in just one single day. At night, the city has no electric lights, only the flickering glow of fires from the desolate ruins. The barking of stray dogs echoes in the night, fighting for food with other displaced animals. Survivors begin building rafts from scrap wood and plastic bottles to navigate the flooded streets. Banks are destroyed, and paper money floats worthless on the water surface like waste paper. Massive shipwrecks lie stranded in the middle of city streets, creating a surreal and creepy landscape. A strong stench rises from the sludge, making the air suffocating and difficult to breathe. Broken bridges become makeshift docks for small watercraft navigating the new waterways. The Coast Guard tries to find survivors, but the number of missing people is too vast to count. Chemical industrial zones are flooded, with floating barrels leaking toxic green substances. Crocodiles escape from nature reserves, swimming freely in the city streets hunting for prey. Old houses collapse completely, burying family heirlooms under the cold and heavy layers of mud. People begin to realize that outside help will not be able to arrive anytime soon. Airports cannot operate, runways becoming dumping grounds for plane wreckages and debris. A massive fire breaks out downtown, spreading fast across buildings due to lack of firefighting water. The rich and the poor are now equal before the hunger and thirst that is tormenting them. Sanitation systems are gone, putting survivors at risk of cholera and typhoid, wiping them out. Amphibious military vehicles try to enter the epicenter but get stuck in the massive piles of rubble. Night falls, bringing bone-chilling cold, forcing people to burn trash to keep themselves warm. The stars in the night sky shine strangely bright because there is no artificial light to compete. A massive oil tanker snaps in half, crude oil blackening a vast stretch of the coastline. Spontaneous floating markets emerge, where people use gold and jewelry to trade for food. Geological structures change, and the map of this region will have to be completely redrawn after the disaster. Children who lost their parents sit dazed by the roadside, staring blankly into the empty void. Scientists look helplessly at black computer screens, as all observation data has been lost. Water begins to evaporate in the heat, creating a dense fog that obscures the survivors' vision. Remaining walls are covered with messages looking for loved ones written in charcoal and brick. A grand piano lies overturned amidst the rubble, a tragic and brutal artistic image of destruction. Silence covers what used to be the busiest shopping malls, with only wind whistling through broken frames. Flocks of vultures begin to gather on high-rise rooftops, waiting for the feast from the reaper. A man tries to start a waterlogged motorcycle in vain, the engine sputtering and dying out. Solar panels are shattered, reflecting sunlight in a disjointed and broken manner. School libraries are filled with mud, books swelling up and rotting away. Asphalt roads peel away, revealing the red soil underneath like open flesh wounds. A group of people is digging in the rubble, hoping to find loved ones still alive. Broken utility poles lie across the road, power lines tangled like a giant spider web. A large public clock has stopped forever at the fateful moment when the wave struck. Monument statues are toppled, with stone heads rolling on the muddy ground. Police hold megaphones announcing evacuation, but the voice is drowned out by the chaos. The water begins to turn black due to oil pollution and ash from the fires. A woman hugs her only surviving pet cat tightly, sitting huddled on a rooftop. Military trucks full of corpses covered in tarps move slowly through the mud. The geographical map of the subcontinent has been permanently altered by the sheer and irresistible force of the ocean. Once proud monuments now stand as broken tombstones, marking the graveyard of a prosperous era that has passed. Humanity stands small and humble amidst the debris, realizing the fragility of the civilization they had built.